Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman. I hope all of you are having a lovely day and ready for it to be a little lovelier because we have our all Linux program, Cooking with Linux with Marcel Gagne. It's going to be a lot of fun. And hey, if you are into Linux, and we know that there are many of you, then hey, this is going to be the show for you where, hey, we have a lot of different topics. And of course, Marcel Gagne himself is just a very entertaining bloke. Hey, you know, Linux or Linux aside. So, with that being said, let's mention a few things, including computeramerica.com. That will have the show notes, which Marcel has done a very comprehensive job on everything we're going to be discussing. And hey, let's face it, a lot of times some things we don't even get to, you can find them in the show notes at computeramerica.com, right there on the homepage. While you're there, also be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech and check out the live video stream brought to you by OWC. So, with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and just jump right into it. So, waiting in the wings, oh so patiently, and let's go ahead and click that button so that we can hear the one, the only Marcel Gagne. Marcel, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, but you know, this could be one of a multitude of universes in which there's more than one of me and more than one of you with just slight variation. So it might not be the one and only.
You know, and I often think, what would be the best version of Ben? Am I the best version of Ben, or is it the Ben that's, you know, maybe, I don't know, worked out a little bit more, had a better head of hair? What is the best Ben? And I always think I am, so that's good. That's
well,
good.
I'd like to think that the best version of me happens to be one that is a billionaire philanthropist.
Yeah, your own version of Tony Stark, but aside,
everybody, come on, everybody wants to be Tony Stark. What a guy wants.
Everyone wants to have resources untold, but in the meantime, I think all of us should strive to be the very best version of ourselves every single day.
Man, dude, you're gonna make me cry.
Thank you. And I say that as I'm drinking something that literally may not be food. It's Monster Energy. It's great stuff. Not sponsored, but I will say that speaking of beverages, you are right there holding up one of your own, and this is our jumping off point. Let's talk, before we talk about wine and Naked Grape, before we talk about that, let's talk about your credentials, what you do, and how you've been over the past month.
How I've been, I think I've been just fine. First of all, I'm this guy who's been writing about Linux and open source, and actually doing radio and television and all sorts of other things about Linux and open source for a long time, since professionally since 1999. So it's been a while. I've been doing this for a while now. Although I've been working in the computer business for even longer than that. So like I'm ancient. I'm like the ancient one in Doctor Strange.
Well aged.
Have you seen Doctor Strange?
I have seen Doctor Strange.
Oh, thank goodness! I can't believe the number of times I ask you about shows. I know.
And Doctor Strange was one of those that it was like, it wasn't, Spider-Man 2, it wasn't Iron Man 3 or whatever, Thor Ragnarok. It was one that it was a new IP I could just go into, and without having known anything else, like between Black Panther and Doctor Strange, I think Marvel really has like the introducing new franchises down to a science. Those are such great movies.
And they actually did it really well. See, we're already leading off what we're supposed to talk about, but they've done that well from the beginning. I mean, I used to buy and read Marvel comic books as a kid. I bought and read DC as well, but I was really a Marvel fan. I mean, that's where my big loyalties lay. And Marvel had this down to a science. This idea that there was a story, and then there'd be the superhero character, and if you wanted to follow the story, you had to buy the comic from the other
Right.
superhero. So if you actually got rolled up into this thing, by the time you were done, you were following like 50 or 60 different superheroes in different comic books. It was amazing.
I
And they've
think,
got this
yeah.
done with science in the movies and the TV shows too.
Yeah, that has to be it. They create a really Marvel character universe. They create their own reality that you then, hey, yeah, and everything's intertwined. So yeah, but hey, comic books aside, you have been in the industry for a while, and you are of course Computer America's resident Linux expert. Where when we talk about new distributions or any Linux news, yeah, you are essentially the evangelist for Computer America. So. Yeah, talk about the show notes real quick and what people, why people should check that out as well.
All right, well, let's cover the wine just because we got to get that out of the way, and it gives me
Sure.
an excuse to take a sip here. Okay.
Sure, go for it.
So today I'm drinking something called Naked Grape. It's a Naked Grape Shiraz, and I showed off the bottle there, and see, there we go. I'll hold it for a second there. There we go, Naked Grape. And the thing that's interesting about this one is, I've been drinking I think on the show, I'm not sure I've ever actually been drinking a Canadian wine on the show. I think everything I drink is from Australia or the US or Chile or France.
And to be fair, I don't know much about wine, growing, but I think of Canada and I think of a frozen tundra. You guys are up there just kind of doing your thing. I don't think vineyards, when I think Canadian. So.
Southern Ontario, where I am, is actually at the same latitude as Northern California.
Oh, okay.
So think about that for a second. Yes, a great deal of Canada is the Great White North, but really not where I am. Not so much. I mean, and although it took summer a long time to get here this year, this is actually a powerful wine growing region, especially when you get down about an hour away from where I am here into the Niagara region. There's a lot of wine, harvesting and growing that's happening.
But here's the question, and again, to Naked Grape, is it good wine growing, or is it good wine?
This is actually the first time I've tried this thing, and it's actually, I mean, it's a nice ruby red Shiraz. It's very fruity, and it has what I'd call a medium finish on it. Nose is kind of, it's not particularly interesting on the nose, but it's a nice, mellow, fruity drinking wine. It's got a little tiny bit of that Shiraz spiciness, but not so much. If somebody hadn't told me this was a Shiraz, I wouldn't actually think of it as a Shiraz. But there you go. It's nice. It's a nice drinking wine.
That's great. And as is most of your wine, we're not talking, or I don't think we'd be talking about, $80 a bottle. How much is this one going for?
About $10 a bottle. So, in fact, up here recently, they started selling wines in the grocery store. This is a new thing.
Oh yeah,
but not international wines. What they sell in the grocery stores is Canadian wines, or at the very least Canadian blended wines. So this one is actually from my local grocery store, Zayres, and it was $10.25 a bottle. So there you go.
There you go. Cheaper for us here in the States, undoubtedly. But
that's right. So it's like $1.50 for you guys down there.
Absolutely, it's cheaper than water. And by the way, I'm drinking a 2018 Monster Energy Zero sugar, 0 calorie, 0 food whatsoever inside of it. And it's full body, delicious, and probably, going to be the end of me. But,
right, and neither of us is endorsing the products that we're using right now.
Absolutely not. But I will say that when I went to the gas station when I purchased it, I did. And by the way, if you're watching the video portion, you can kind of see it there. And that was the marquee sign they had there. And I always thought they were at the gas station's hiring, but it reads now hiring monsters. And I'm like, how are you going to find monsters? And that is so rude to the people who actually do apply.
Well, maybe what they're trying to say is they want big, tough brutes working at the store.
Yeah, probably. So, but I just found that funny.
Monsters.
Yeah, thank you. So, all right. So, drinks aside, we have our wine. But now we need to get to our Linux part of the whole thing.
All right. Well, you know what? You should refresh the page because, as usual, I've changed it on you.
I will do just that, and I believe I already did.
It's terrible. Actually, the first thing I want to talk about is the whole net neutrality thing.
I thought that was officially dead, and we no longer cared about it.
Technically, I suppose it's officially dead, although I have to question just how incredibly dead it actually is. And I say that because if you stop to think about it, this is one of those issues that I don't know that it's actually going to go away anytime soon. And I've got a little post that I linked back to Cooking with Linux there that I did a little while ago. And our your buddy Ajit Pai, the FCC chairman, who was hired because he hates the FCC and he hates net neutrality and he hates freedom of information and so forth, finally managed to railroad this through. Now, I wanted to say something about it because although it's technically officially dead from the perspective of the FCC,
Mm-hmm.
I have begun to, and this is actually going to fit right in with something about Microsoft and Linux in just a moment.
Sure.
I've come to question whether there's any going back on this. I really kind of have, because people are used to getting their internet in a particular way, and increasingly they have alternatives. There are different ways to skirt the system, to go around things if you don't want to, including things like VPNs, for instance. Unless you want to ban VPNs, and punish people who use them with imprisonment.
They've tried that in Russia.
Well, yeah, unless they try that in the U.S., it's I don't know that it's going to be that big of an issue going forward. The other thing too is there are a number of states, even in the U.S., that have their own laws
Mm-hmm.
that are superseding the federal net neutrality laws. So net neutrality is alive and well in a number of U.S. states, regardless of what the FCC has finally ruled. So those states that still enforce net neutrality or have net neutrality as part of their do I need to explain net neutrality?
Here on Computer America, we certainly covered it more extensively when the actual debates were going on and the public comment to the FCC was going on. But we've done kind of super shows with only focus on net neutrality, and for one of those, and like you're talking about like the death of the whole thing. There's so much misinformation about the net neutrality. I think you should touch on it lately. But the only thing I'll say about it is that net neutrality were essentially not formal rules and regulations and things like that, but practices, policies that were put into place over the course of 20 years of the internet. And
that's true. However, Obama did write it into law.
Yes, he did. But and I think that was one thing that tripped a lot of people up. Were like, the internet was fine pre-net neutrality. And it's like, everyone kind of obeyed net neutrality before it was a written law. And now they want to repeal it, and now they want to really infringe on, kind of the concepts of open, fair, net, what have you, which I can start to see where Linux starting to come in here. But
yes.
But
we like open. We like open in the Linux
right.
world.
So anything I missed, Sarah, please feel free to clarify net neutrality, and then
Yeah. No, I don't think the reason that I wanted to bring it up, aside from the fact, of course, that anything that has to do with free and open is something that interests me as somebody who believes in Linux and open source, and frankly the open source philosophy in a big way. I think it's important. But I also think that regardless of the fact that it was proclaimed dead and that it was officially written off by Ajit Pai and his role at the FCC, I am increasingly of the opinion that I don't know that it's actually going to change anything, precisely because there's too much at stake for the people that are willing to support and will continue to support a free and open internet.
See, and that's where I contradict you just a little bit, because it's and this is something that I think there's an article I wrote a little while ago where the people who were supporting net neutrality were saying, if this goes away, here's the dystopian future that can happen. Yep. Emphasis on can. And I made it very clear that cable companies are much smarter than that. They're not going to do away with rules and then flip a switch and go, all right, guys, we own the world. Let's go ahead and start ruining it. The changes that are going to come about with net neutrality are going to be gradual, and you are barely going to notice them, if you do at all. And we're going to look back, years in the future and think this was the pivot point when services became exclusive, or this became that, or it's going to be gradual, is what I'm saying. So things won't change immediately, and there will be pushback, but it's going to be 1,000 little battles instead of all is lost.
Yeah, in the Linux and open source world, and we'll tie that into to my GitHub thing in just a moment here.
Sure.
We have managed to, without being, at least I don't think we can think of as the Linux and open source world as being particularly militant. We just like to do our own, we just like to do our own thing. And I think if the one thing that we've learned is there's always a way. There's always a way around these things, and we will continue to find a way around these things, or the open world will continue to find a way around these things. Just as there are so many fronts, where these battles happen and occur, and so far it hasn't had a huge impact. Like every time somebody tries to put in a law in place that says, okay, now we can do this,
Hmm.
the open world always finds a way to say no, 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 no.
Okay.
You might think you've won here, but you really haven't.
Right, and of course, these concepts of policy and what is acceptable with the internet, it's such a strange thing because there's another one working its way through the European Parliament, the EU
Yes.
Parliament. That's another one to really take note of if you are not insanely bored to tears with all these people proclaiming it's the end of the internet as we know it. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen on a lot of different fronts, like you said. Anyways, all this net
I think
neutrality
the one you're
stuff.
talking about, if you're talking about you can't link without express permission from the.
Essentially, it's taking the content creation filter. They're kind of inspired by what's happening with YouTube. And by the way, about 2 days ago, I cleared up my first content flub hubbub with YouTube. It's the first time where I'm not going to say the company that claimed one of my videos, but there's about, folks, if you're interested, about 700 Computer America shows up on YouTube. And yeah, one of the companies just claimed an entire video of Computer America and said, hey, take that down. And I got a copyright strike on YouTube. So trust me,
I fought a couple. My wife is a singer. Well, actually she's a manager at a life insurance company, but she also sings, and she has a degree in music and drama from the University of Guelph.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we did was we put together a video, which, by the way, we loaded as private. Okay,
Oh yeah.
so it was unlisted. It was an unlisted video, and we paid a company for the right to use the music so that she could sing this song at her niece's wedding. So we actually followed all the rules on this.
More so than
And
most.
we
Yeah.
got, yeah, and we got a copyright strike on a private video. So I got a copyright strike on a private video that we paid for the rights to use the music on. And I had to prove all this. So I
Yeah.
had to jump through all the bloody hoops to prove this. It's like, I paid for this. I have the document that says that she has the right to perform this music. In fact, if it didn't even have to be private, she could have performed it on YouTube because she paid for the license to be able to do that. And yet they still came after
Yeah,
us.
it's that automated content filter, and that
It is
is
awful.
yeah, that's what's changing in the EU, and they're saying that essentially they want to crack down on copyrighted content, but the problem is what is copyright and what is free use and what is fair use and what is parody and so much. And yeah, it's going to be a real problem because let's say someone claims the Computer America logo as theirs and everything Computer America gets taken down. I now have to prove to their content system that I'm in charge of everything, and
That
it's
is correct.
open
And
for
the
abuse.
onus is on you. And if somebody has more money and time than you do,
Yeah.
you're in deep caca.
Open for abuse is the main problem. So that's what's happening there.
Yeah, it's actually, and of course, I mean, they've added all sorts of things with that. So linking to a news story. So like when you go on Facebook and you link to a news story, oh, this is interesting, check out this news story. It's like, oh, no, you're breaking the rules because you haven't officially checked with the content creator to know whether or not they allow you to link that story. Well, piss off.
Right.
And then there's this whole notion of people who create memes all the time. It's like, well, you're using a background image that has been
Standard. Yeah.
and that's the whole point of a meme. It's been carried down over the course of years. It's an image that's easily recognizable that you can do a riff on. And now they're saying, no, that's not allowed anymore. And you know what? I
Yeah.
honestly, and I'm and I'm not sorry about this. To quote somebody else, to quote a politician in our province here. Sorry, but I'm not sorry. You know what? Leave our bloody internet alone. Mind your own damn business. We've done plenty well without you up until this point.
But then they come out with things like GDPR, which is great. That really helped a lot of.
Not great. It's not great.
You don't like GDPR.
You know why it's not great?
Sure.
You know why it's not great? It's not great because the only people who pay any attention to it are the ones who weren't a problem to begin with. Okay, so all the people, it's like the stupid do not call lists on the phone. You sign up for the do not call list, and the companies that are not a problem respect it. The companies that are in overseas, in I don't know, in Russia or whatever,
right,
continue to call you on the phone, regardless of the fact that you're on a do not call list. So the only people you are hurting are the people who were good to begin with. It's like that. My dad has always said locks were made to keep honest people out. Okay, it's like so you put a lock on your door. The person who was going to who's going to break into your house wasn't going to open your door even if it was unlocked.
Yeah, but all right. So let's
get all these stupid emails from all these.
Oh, hey, by the way, Computer America has updated their privacy policy statement. You need to check that out and read this 80-page document. But all right, so obviously sticky issue. Let's stay away from that. Net neutrality dies. Let's tie this in with, and I'm assuming you're moving towards GitHub, which was a major acquisition.
Yes,
out of nowhere.
I actually have a nice long post which I wrote about when Microsoft bought GitHub. GitHub is the largest repository of open source software.
I didn't see it coming. I really didn't. That was weird.
Well, what I initially thought, and I linked to the article where I talk about this. There are two things there that are somewhat amusing. First of all, there's a video. I'll tell you about the video right now. There's a video which somebody created an extension a Chrome extension that turns the GitHub page into something that looks like Windows 7, complete with Clippy.
Everyone loves Clippy.
Everyone loves Clippy. Everyone loves Clippy. So I've got a video. So there's a link to a video that I made on YouTube if somebody wants to check it out on how you can turn your GitHub page into Microsoft. It looks like Microsoft XP. So it's like the Microsoft XP layout, complete with background, and Clippy in the corner saying, "Oh, I see that you've opened a repo. Would you like to add some files?"
Yeah.
It's hilarious. But here's the thing: Microsoft has come a long way from the days of Steve Ballmer saying that Linux was a cancer. In fact, a couple of years ago, Steve Ballmer put out was either interviewed or put out a post. I can't remember which one, where he said, "I used to think that Linux was a cancer, but now I love it because Microsoft's policy now is Microsoft loves Linux." But my first thought when somebody mentioned it to me, past the get out feeling of Microsoft was buying GitHub, was Microsoft has worked really, really hard to paint itself as a good citizen of the open source world. So my first thought was, why would you do this? Because of all the time, like with all the things that have happened, with over the years, with you trying to paint yourself as, not just trying, but actually making real inroads into, working with the open source community, right down to creating your own version of Linux, for the Azure cloud switches and so forth. Mm-hmm. My thought was the optics are bad. That was my big thing. It was the optics are bad. You're going to have people coming out of the woodwork who are going to say, "Oh, this is just another, a Microsoft extend, embrace, and extinguish," from the days where they paid SCO to go after Linux and so forth. If anybody is bored enough that they want to go back and take a look at that kind of history. And then, people said, "Oh, there's going to be this big hiatus over to the competitor, which is GitLab." And GitLab, so if you take a look at my post there, GitLab posted something on
Twitter,
I think
right?
The next day or the day after, they posted something on Twitter that said, "We're seeing 10 times the normal daily amount of repositories moving from GitHub."
Which and you just have an embedded image here, but I saw that and I looked at the bar graph and I'm like, I feel like they could have used a bit more of a dramatic kind of timeline chart kind of deal, because it's like, pretty kind of flat and consistent, and then a couple of spikes. But yeah, so the competitor saw a number of imports. Right?
Yeah, so there was a spike, but GitHub has 28 million users. Okay. And there was every day there were people who were, they say, migrating to GitLab, but there's no difference between I copy my code from GitHub to GitLab and I copy my code and then I leave GitHub. Okay, those are two entirely different things. And they've got this thing. And so what I did was I went and took a look at I stretched out. So if you scroll down a little further, I've got a graph that shows over 30 days what that's not the best one. If you go to my Cooking with Linux page, is actually a better one.
Sure.
Anyway, but if you take a look at that chart, yeah, so just go right up to the top there. That's the one. That's a better chart. So if you take a look at that over the course of 30 days, you'll see that a week later, like not even a week later, 3 days later, that graph just sort of drops back down to almost zero. So the exodus that people were expecting to happen because Microsoft bought GitHub hasn't happened. And in fact, the Linux Foundation, Jim Zemlin of is he the CEO or is he, I forget, he's like one of the head honchos at the Linux Foundation, which
Right.
by the way, pays Linus Torvalds to work on the Linux kernel. He basically said, no, this is a good thing. This is not something to worry about. So you have to ask yourself, given the history and given all the worries that existed about Microsoft buying GitHub, and of course, even all the stuff, we've had to ramp up our servers because we've got 10 times the traffic. If you go and take a look over the 30 days, on average, every day they had like 100 to a couple hundred people that would either migrate or just copy code over to GitLab, and then it goes down to maybe twice that after the fact. Okay, and you could go back and you could take a look at the chart if you wanted, from today and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, there was a big spike that lasted about 3 days, and then it just sort of dropped back down to zero. So I think that my Google Assistant just piped up and said, "Oh, I found information for you here."
Right, and this is something that is not unique to to GitHub or any kind of online outrage. We've seen it with gaming companies and a lot of other PR quote unquote disasters. And while there may be some residual kind of tension, a lot of these PR agencies are learning that you release a statement as soon as possible, but then you wait a week and you kind of see what is really going on. And that works in a lot of areas. So it's not just GitHub. Like, this is online outrage to a T.
Yeah, but I had to do this one because, the initial response to it, I mean, the reason I actually bothered to write this, to work on this, was the initial response was such that, oh, that's just it. People are going to leave in droves. But if you actually do the math, it's like it's a pittance. It's a drop in the bucket.
It's one that I've been bringing up lately is the idea of cord cutters. The idea that cable companies are just at up against the ropes. It's just a couple of people who are going to drop their cable away from just ruining this entire industry. And it's like, when you look at the numbers though, cable, at least here in the United States, is like I think it's like a 200 million subscriber base, and cord cutters have taken away like 600,000 like over the course of like the last year or two, and that's like the highest it's ever been. So like, it's a percentage of the overall thing, but it's a trend, and so people are getting excited, but it's just so small. You can't
overinflate. In the case of the cord cutters, it actually is a trend. You use the right word there. It's a trend. Whereas this GitLab GitHub thing.
Well, the trend is that they're staying.
I see that as a spike, and that's about it.
Well, the trend is that they're staying at GitHub.
That's the trend. With cable, it's interesting. I'm one of those crazy people who still pays for cable, but who hasn't watched cable TV in 3 years. Honestly, we stream everything. It's either Netflix or YouTube or whatever. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was an election here in Ontario on June 7th. And what was interesting about that is I never once thought
Actually,
of turning on the television.
Yeah, and never. All right, so I was gonna use that as a teaser, but there's music playing in the background, and yeah, we're gonna get right back to it. So everyone, stay tuned. Marcel Gagne, and we're going to wrap up this idea with GitHub and Microsoft, and move on to other things. Everyone, stay tuned. More after this.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
Back to the Computer America Show. See, it wasn't that bad. We are, of course, continuing on with Marcel Gagne and, yeah, everything Linux. By the way, if you missed any part of today's show, feel free to check it out wherever podcasts are heard, because the podcast is simply the entirety of the show rebroadcast to, to iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Blog Talk Radio, whatever. Everything right there when you need it. So, okay. So, Marcel, thank you for, of course, being here and continuing on. And yeah, we were just wrapping up free office and, this idea that while a very small sliver of people would need this kind of functionality, I think that even you would agree, though, that it's just great that there's another option for people.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And the reason that like I said, the reason that I point this one out is for the people out there who think, well, if I'm running, if I really need to use the Microsoft Office document format, I'm trapped. I absolutely positively must use this, and it positively must, be 100% compatible with it. Then you can just, use a suite like this as your drop-in replacement as opposed to LibreOffice, and you have no excuse at that point. So.
Right. So yeah, it's so all right, good, free, and of course a link to it in the show notes. Now, you said that leads into open source software in the next one.
Yeah. Okay. One of the other places where it's like, can I use open source software to do all these things? You may remember we did a show where I talked about the Librem phone, which was like this privacy focused phone by the company
Purism, right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Purism. Did you have them on the show at some point?
No. We've just been hearing a lot about them. Like I don't know. We keep on.
If you want, I know somebody inside. I could
wow.
You'd like to chat?
Look at Marcel throwing his weight around. Hey, no, love to have him on if you remember. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Purism had this Librem 5 phone, and then somebody else. And now they're like literally building the hardware. So like it is like everything. It's the phone. It's the operating system. It's everything that runs. So it's a privacy focused phone, which is both the hardware and the operating system. Then there's EELO, which I mentioned was created. It was is a project by the creator of the Mandriva. Also Mandrake Linux operating system from way back, and and it's the same sort of idea. It's a privacy focused. However, he is focused on creating an operating system, like a fully open source operating system for a smartphone that will run on any smartphone or a variety of smartphones. So it's not a specific piece of hardware sold by somebody. It's just like an operating system that you can use to replace what's actually on your phone, right?
Right.
So the other option, so the other thing though, which is interesting, is there are, of course, tons and tons of open source programs that and I do mean tons, that you can download and install for your smartphone, if you wanted to, if you'll pardon the expression, rid yourself of all the proprietary stuff. And the reason I'm pointing this one out in the news section, it's on androidpolice.com, and the links are there, 2018/04/29/like-using-open source software and blah, blah, blah. You'll have it in the show notes. But this guy decided to actually go to the trouble of getting rid of all his closed source software, all the packages that we're using, and trying to find open source alternatives to actually absolutely everything on his phone. And I thought it was kind of an interesting article because it's the sort of thing that I would have liked to have tried to do. And honestly, let's be honest, I love Linux and open source software, specifically computer-based Linux operating system.
Right.
And Android is Linux. Android is just another flavor of Linux that runs on these things. But of course, a lot of the software that I run on my phone is not free and open source software, unlike the operating system Android, which is free and open source. So it's an interesting exercise. It's worth reading for the people who want to check it out. And because let's face it, it's actually not as easy as it sounds to dump everything that you're using and go 100% open source.
I feel like it's kind of one of those things where if you never paid attention to your diet and then you said, I'm going to cut out all added sugar from my diet, and then you start to read food labels and you're like, everything has added sugar, everything. And, and I feel like it would be kind of the same way where you start to read things that you have never even heard of before just because, it's the only thing that'll fit the bill. I mean, this seems like an extreme case, but again, it seems like he did it for the sake of the article and the experience.
And for that, hats off. I doff my hat for going ahead and trying it. And I have to say that, I would also like to get rid of all the sugar from my diet, but I'm weak.
Yeah. I mean, there goes all your wine, and then that's half our content, so that you can't have that.
Good grief!
Yeah.
My dollar deity, I can't possibly do that. Anyway.
But no. So very interesting that he of course tried to do this, and it's something that might actually come up because I actually heard a rumor. I don't think this is Linux, but just with Android and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know this, but supposedly Samsung keeps a backup Android operating system that is completely independent of Google. Like Google has no hands on it. Like it's Samsung's operating system that will run on Android phones, and they keep that in the reserve in case Google ever destroys us all. I assume so.
But like. I realize that Google occasionally, despite the fact that their motto used to be "Don't do evil,"
and now it's do the right thing, right?
Yeah, now it's do the right thing. Which is one could argue that they're not exactly the same thing. Despite all that, and let me say it again, God, I hope Google isn't evil.
Absolutely.
As I have my various devices in the house listening to me at all times, I don't think that that's ever going to happen because Google is a pretty good open source citizen. They not only sell the dog food, they eat it as well. And their entire enterprise runs on Linux and open source software. And the code for Android is actually available. So I don't think this is happening anytime soon. And I think that if the community wanted, and the community occasionally does create their own versions of this, but if the community really wanted to, a la Linux, they could. And again, let's remember, Android is actually Linux, so it is open source software. But we're talking about the applications that run on it, right?
Right. Yeah. So anyways, so with that, we took up a lot of the show time talking about VR and AR. So
all right, let's go to Linux on the desktop. Okay, we'll do our distribution focus. Okay.
Right. So distribution focus, and so just again, quick overview: what is a distribution, and how do you find so many?
All right. Well, first of all, a distribution is like in the world of let's use the Microsoft world as a comparison. In the world of Microsoft is Microsoft Windows. That's it. There's Microsoft Windows. There's like one company that produces Microsoft Windows, and you can't buy Windows from there's no Apple Windows. There's no Ford Windows or Honda Windows or anything like that. Windows is a product of Microsoft. The end.
Right.
Because Linux is completely free and open source software, there are, and I'm talking desktop Linux here, although there's, server side stuff as well, but desktop Linux, like the graphical stuff that you and I are using to communicate here, there are a whole variety of companies and, for that matter, organizations and individuals who produce their own Linux distribution. And basically, it's like building a different model of car by a different company. All cars are basically the same. They're these vehicles that you sit in. It's got an engine. You drive from place to place. Most of them have four wheels. The end. Okay, but that doesn't change the fact that there's Honda and Ford and Toyota and Mitsubishi and every other manufacturer on the planet creating their own versions of cars. And some of them are electric and some of them are gas and so forth. Well, in the Linux world, there are a whole bunch of companies and organizations that are creating these desktops, but they're creating their own version of it, their own variation of it. And sometimes they have a particular look and feel on the desktop, or they'll have a different look and feel, or they'll come with a different set of default applications. In the case of like LibreOffice, for instance, some of them might have AbiWord, just to use it as to use a word processor that most people have never heard of, but is available under the Linux platform. Or they'll use Numeric, for the calc spreadsheet. So that's really what it comes down to. How do you find them all? Well, you can just do a search on Linux distributions, or you can go to distrowatch.com. Okay,
I have heard of DistroWatch, right?
Yeah, DISTRO. Distrowatch, DISTROWATCH.com, and basically it's like a running stream of whenever a distribution produces a new version and and makes it available to the public, you can read about it, what's different and so forth. You visit the website for that particular distribution, and you can download like a whole operating system for your PC. Most distributions, big distributions, especially desktop distributions, will have a what's called a live version, which you can then burn the image onto a CD or a DVD, depending on how big it is. Typically nowadays it's a DVD, or a USB key for that matter. And then you just boot up off of that, you try it out, and if you like it, you can install it to your PC.
And part of me feels like that process is pretty easy, but at the same time, physical media, as you know, is going by the wayside. Just as an aside, is there any effort to kind of, I don't know, I know there are virtual machines where you could, kind of load these things up. You don't even have to restart your computer. You can, kind of do this all on the fly. Yep. Is there any way to do this besides physical media? I know that's a big ask because you can't, read from a drive and write to it, to install an entirely new operating system.
Without having some kind of an external media. Right. And you have that same problem, by the way, with Windows. If something happens to bork up your computer.
Oh, right.
You have no choice but to go to external media. You're kind of done for.
Right.
If you put in a new drive because it crashed, for instance, you're going to have to get an external media, which means you'll have to, that free Office that free Microsoft Windows copy that you thought was free, you're going to find out what it actually costs you to be able to reinstall it on your PC.
Yep. And actually, as an aside, did you hear about the guy that got sent to jail for 5 years or something like that, or 10 years for ordered like 10,000 install CDs for Windows XP. and he ordered them from China. He was giving them away with refurbished computers because he was saving computers from the landfill. He would go out, fix them up, clean them up, and have a new version, a cracked version of Windows XP, and he would give them away to schools or other places that needed computers. And yeah, because he had those cracked, counterfeit physical Windows CDs, he was sent to jail for 10 years for stealing software.
So he was doing the right thing, but it wasn't legal.
Right. So yeah, but that's a whole other aside. All right, so still need physical media, a DVD.
Yeah, so you still need physical media, and what that guy should have done is loaded up all those PCs with Linux, and that way he'd never have to worry about it.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, people would still have it. And there are great companies. We've talked about them on the show, Reglue, for instance, is an organization that I've mentioned in the past. And here in Waterloo, in Kitchener, near me, there's a recycling. There's an organization that recycles and rebuilds computers for people who can't afford it. For families that don't have the money to buy their own computer.
Right.
So I think that it's a great idea, but obviously, you got to do it in the right way, and the right way to do it is to load a Linux desktop, quite frankly, on it. So yeah, you still need the physical media. I mean, to go back to what we were talking about, you still need the physical media to try it out. And if you are like me, I mean, I like to think that the show tagline used to be, maybe it still is, the world runs on computers and we run computers. That is because of that. I still think that there's a huge number of people out there who use computers in a hobby sort of way. They play with it, they try things, they load stuff up. Any gamer is a hobbyist who's going to try this sort of stuff out,
Right.
Like a serious gamer I'm talking about here. So I don't think that it's that big a deal to try something new. And yes, you can set up some kind of a virtual machine manager and load them up. And in fact, I try a lot of my distributions that I talk about on the show, that I create videos for on YouTube. I run a lot of those inside of virtual machines. So I am constantly trying these things out. I just download the ISO, the image file that you would burn onto a DVD, and I boot it up on my PC without having to actually totally reinstall. I just create a virtual machine where I take it for a spin and see what it's like.
Yeah, time saver.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you can absolutely do that. Let's talk about what you actually were able to get your hands on. And I'm also concerned at, are there Linux distributions focused to cats? Because that's what I'm picking up right out of the gate. That's what I'm picking up. And I'm afraid to teach cats how to talk to each other. That's bad.
Well, I see that this is a serious concern, and I applaud you thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
This all started with I've gone and switched distributions again. Okay, I know I do this like every 3 or 4 months. It seems I get rid of what's on my computer and I run something entirely different. And this is actually one of the cool things about running a Linux distribution. I have created 2 partitions on my PC, on my disk. One partition is my data, my own personal data, all my files, all my personal information, and so forth. And then I have another partition, which is called / or the root. And my / home, which is all my stuff, is on that separate partition. So if I reinstall, all I do is I reinstall root. All my data is still there, and I can basically just start up and start. Obviously, I may need to reinstall software that I use on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
But it is fairly easy for me to switch distributions. And last time I was on the show, I was running Fedora 28. All right. And now today I'm running Kubuntu 1804, which is the latest version of Ubuntu.
I actually remember hearing something about this, and I think we talked about this last time you were on the show, where Ubuntu they switched from it was like GNOME to KDE or something like that. Like they had a switch behind the scenes, and I may be mistaken, but a lot of people were excited that they kind of dropped a technology that they felt they were forcing, and they went back to what worked.
Well, it's let me just clear that up a little tiny bit. What you're talking about is Unity, and the idea behind Unity is it was going to be both a desktop, mobile. In other words, it worked on everything. That was kind of the idea behind Unity. I was never a fan of Unity, and what they decided with this new version of Ubuntu, and by the way, there's a link in the show notes. I did a video that covers, and I call it the Cat's Guide to Ubuntu 1804 because I was feeling a little bit weird. Maybe I drank too much wine. I have no idea. So in the introduction, I've got my cat. I said, my cat installed Ubuntu 18.04.
Did you kind of like use his paw to hit the enter key and be like,
Yeah,
yep, there we go.
yeah, that sort of thing.
Okay.
I think she's going to hate me for a long time for that. But it's like she's avoiding my computer now. She doesn't want to go on the keyboard anymore. So I think I've cured her of that now. So that's what the Cat's Guide to 18.04 is. It's a review, but it covers the full installation of Ubuntu 18.04. Now I'm running Kubuntu 18.04.
Okay.
Focused on the KDE/Plasma desktop as opposed to the GNOME desktop. Now, when you were talking about the Unity GNOME thing, so what Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu, did was they decided, we're just not going to do Unity anymore. Like we're done with that, which is interesting because Librem, who we talked about, the phone company there, has decided that they're going to make available a version of the Unity interface, the Ubuntu Unity interface, available for the smartphone. So it's.
I mean, that does not surprise me at all, and I think this is I know that this is Linux, but Windows and Windows 8. That's why it kind of failed so spectacularly. Was that when you try to unify, and Unity, I get that, when you try to unify those operating systems across devices for desktop users, for power users, or users that kind of count on the real estate, and you try to make that compatible with mobile, you lose. Yeah, you are a loser because you lose a lot of functionality. Whereas for phones, and I can see why why phones would want to push this, you are a clear winner where, you kind of add more functionality to phones that they didn't have before. So I can see where phones want it, but desktops don't. So.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that. I think that is, I think trying to create something that worked on every single device and would automatically, I mean, that was kind of the idea behind responsive content on the web.
Right.
But content on a web, like a web page, is not the same thing as how you interact with, the real estate on your device, whether it's a desktop or whether it's a phone or a tablet. It really just is not the same thing.
Right.
Anyway, but what they did with the GNOME true believers from way back who were really upset that Unity, forced its way on the Ubuntu desktop, I don't think we're 100% happy because the GNOME that they went with was GNOME 3, which got just blasted when it first came out because I've referred to it as kind of KDE-like in the sense that it uses the concept of workspaces, to manipulate things, and it uses the if you're an old Mac OS type person, you know how they have this thing where basically you present all the windows on the desktop.
Right. Yeah.
I forget what it's called on a Mac. I haven't used it for a long, long time. But so they've got the similar concept, which has been in KDE for a long time, but GNOME 3 also has. And so I'm one of those people that loved GNOME 3 when it came out. I thought, this is really great. This is like GNOME is finally taking this jump into the future. It's finally being modified to something that's more usable, that's prettier, that's nicer. But of course, the people who didn't like the ribbon, in Microsoft Office, those people in GNOME were going, but it's not GNOME. It's not like, it's not what I'm used to from way back when. Well, anyway, so when Canonical decided to go back to GNOME, they didn't go back to GNOME 2. In other words, the classic GNOME. They decided to go to GNOME 3. So that made me actually very happy because I happen to like GNOME 3. Even though I am a KDE Plasma guy, probably until KDE Plasma does something so awful that I just can't look at them anymore, I can work with GNOME 3. I like GNOME 3.
I'm sure there are lots of other improvements under the hood. It only made sense. I'm sure that 3 isn't the worst thing in the world. So all right, so Ubuntu and Kubuntu. Let's talk about what you kind of felt with that, because this is one of those, sometimes you come on and it's like, hey, here's a distro you've never heard of, and here's how it played out. And this is one of those that if you're looking for, a first-time Linux distribution, Ubuntu, Kubuntu, they're up there.
Awesome choice. It's an absolute awesome choice. And one of the reasons it's an awesome choice is, hopefully we'll have time to talk about the next one that I've got underneath here.
Sure.
But the reason that Ubuntu and Kubuntu is an awesome choice is because if you're going to pick a distribution where you think that you might need some hand-holding, there are huge community of people and companies and businesses and you name it that use Ubuntu. Okay, so this is not some distant niche product that nobody knows anything about. No, this is like the biggie. Especially when it comes to the desktop. Red Hat is the biggie in the server space. And I understand that this Fedora desktop and so forth, but like Ubuntu is everywhere. You're going to find somebody that's running Ubuntu or Kubuntu out there somewhere. And by the way, the Ubuntu Kubuntu difference is the desktop environment. The applications that run under the surface, things like LibreOffice, for instance, or Google Chrome or whatever, are going to be the same anyway. So it's just the way it's the look and feel of your desktop, but under the surface, everything is still the same. So
right, yeah, yep, and yeah. So I mean, you did this video, the Cat's Guide. What did you really kind of explore about it? Is this a guide for people who have not upgraded Ubuntu in a while? Is this for new people to Linux altogether? Yes. This video that you made, what's the thrust of it?
Yeah, the thrust of it is what does the installation look like now? In other words, what are the differences in the installation? And one of the big differences in installation is they now have a minimal installation. In other words, you can have a really, really basic desktop, like in the sense of a Chrome desktop, for instance, where you don't have you don't have Office applications, you don't have all these other things. It's basically operating system, web browser. Now you can connect to the internet and do stuff. So they have a minimal install, which I think is really kind of a cool thing. They've got a nice little introduction when you boot up the desktop for the first time. It takes you through and says, "Oh, here are the things that you'll want to know. This is what this is. This is what that is. Push over here." That
Linux
sort of
being
thing.
user friendly, that's not what I signed up for. How
I know.
dare they?
So that friendliness, that hand holding at the beginning is kind of a new thing. And
Right.
the reason that the LTS, the 1804, is interesting is it is an LTS. It's a long-term support, which means that Canonical will support this with updates, security updates, software updates, the whole thing for the next 5 years.
Wow.
So if you're not the sort of person who likes to upgrade every, like me, who wants to reinstall something every 6 months or every 3 months or whatever, and you just want something that works really well, that's going to be well supported for a long time, you have basically their guarantee that for the next 5 years, they will support this thing.
Right. So, and actually, I'm going to stop us right there about Ubuntu, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to Bunsen Labs Linux.
Yes.
And yeah, I'll give you like the last 3-4 minutes and let's see what we can do.
Okay, I decided that this one I have a YouTube video as well. So if you want to, to walk through it and see what it's like, check out the video that's attached to it. Bunsen Labs is based on and I'll call it this one a niche distribution called Crunchbang Linux, which was designed to be like a minimalist, as in I can run this on like the most, the oldest, cheapest, slowest hardware that I've got in my possession, and it's still going to work. So that was originally the idea. Crunchbang still exists in spirit. I mean, I think it's been abandoned completely now, but it exists in spirits because there's a small handful of distributions that have it. Bunsen Labs is a really neat distribution, and I think it's a good one if you want to get a feel for, I'll call it raw Linux as well as the desktop experience. It's not entirely a minimalist desktop. I mean, you can right click and there are menus. There's no like start button in the corner. You right click on the desktop and there are drop down menus that show you all the various things that are there. There are some types of widgets which exist. You'll see on the screenshot that I included there's hotkey support. So all sorts of things on the desktop, like firing up a browser, opening up a window, that sort of thing. There are hotkeys for everything. So you don't have to use a mouse if you don't want to for a lot of these things. And in the installation, there's a whole bunch of optional products. So when you start it up, there's this startup screen that says, there's a bunch of optional software. Would you like to install it? So it takes you through this question and answer thing for installing things. And what's neat about it, if you want to really geek out, this thing is great because the whole thing happens in a text window. So it's all in a terminal window. Like all this optional software gets installed, the Q&A, and like I said, it's in the screenshot for the show notes there. You can see it. It's like, you want to install this? Great. And it goes through, the apt install, blah, blah, blah. It's based on Debian 9. That's what's under the. So it's like the true to the spirit of free software, which is what Ubuntu is based on. So a lot of distributions are based on Ubuntu, but Ubuntu is based on Debian, and this is a Debian 9 distribution. Okay, but like I said, it's wonderfully geeky. It works great. It actually does. I was kind of taken by it. So it's Bunsen Labs. You can download the ISO for that one and check it out. But it's kind of beautiful, and like I said, it's minimalist. So if you want something that runs really, really fast on your desktop, this might be one to check out. And maybe if I'm feeling really brave, in the next couple of months or something like that, I may just do this as my next distribution.
Oh, that's gonna be a lot of shortcuts. But hey, Marcel, I'll be honest with you. Music means that we have to kind of go. And I know we never get to everything. So everyone, if you want a little bit of homework, because we know homework is a good thing, please check out the show notes, and you can check out what Marcel is up to, what he's doing. Plenty of stuff on his Flipboard, plenty of stuff on his YouTube. He makes a lot of content, and hey, go check it out. And again, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. And Marcel, hey, thanks for being here. Looking forward to next month as well.
Okay.
All right. So
good seeing you.
Yeah, no, great seeing you too. So, everyone, be sure to catch the same time, same place, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. And, of course, All Linux, Cooking with Linux, that's the every third Thursday of the month, if you want to check back with us. So, until next time, actually, let me see, tomorrow on the program, get this right, we have joining us Mr. Ralph Bond, the man himself. He's a great guy. Everyone, we got to go. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.